Okay, so you've got this pile of reading in front of you, articles, notes, maybe some official documents, all about the big political news. Prime Minister Mark Carney's new government.
That's right. We're pulling from a bunch of places here: CBC, Global, Politico, Advisor.ca, CPAC, CTV, even the PM's own website, and crucially, the mandate letter itself. It's quite a mix.
And what we're doing in this deep dive is taking your research, all those sources, and boiling it down, trying to figure out, okay, what are the real core priorities here? What's the background story?
And what's this different approach they keep talking about? We want to pull out the key insights, the things that really matter from everything you've gathered.
Exactly. So where do we start? One phrase that seems to pop up right away in several sources is this idea of a generational challenge.
Yeah, that phrase really sets the stage. It comes up quite a bit as the context for everything this government is trying to do.
A generational challenge sounds pretty heavy. What exactly are the sources saying that entails?
Well, it's sort of twofold. Globally, they paint a picture of a world that's just more dangerous now, more divided.
Okay.
Geopolitical risks are up, which sources say puts Canada's sovereignty under threat. And the whole global trading system, it's apparently going through a massive shakeup, maybe the biggest since, the Berlin Wall came down.
Wow. So serious stuff on the world stage, not just minor adjustments.
That's the sense you get. And then there's the domestic side. Sources point to this ongoing issue of weak productivity.
Productivity. We hear that a lot.
Right. And it's apparently really squeezing government finances, which then makes life less affordable for people and potentially threatens social programs down the line.
Okay, so you've got this double whammy, big global instability, plus these core economic issues at home. It sounds like the sources suggest the government feels like it needs a really strong response.
Definitely. The language used is pretty stark.
Yeah.
Sources keep saying these challenges need to be met head-on with focus, determination, and fundamentally different approaches to governing.
That phrase, fundamentally different, really stands out.
It does. It seems central to how they want to operate, or at least how they want to be seen operating.
And speaking of fundamentally different, maybe the most obvious example, highlighted everywhere, is this move to just one single mandate letter for the entire cabinet.
Yeah, that's a clear break. Usually each minister gets their own letter spelling out their specific tasks.
Yeah.
This time, one letter for everyone.
What's the read on that? How are the sources interpreting that choice?
They're saying it reflects a unified mission. It's meant to signal a new approach, everyone pulling in the same direction from day one.
Interesting.
One source even had this striking analogy. They said it's like Carney has taken over like a new CEO, and the mandate letter itself, it reads more like a corporate mission statement than your typical government document.
A new CEO that really suggests a hard reset, as one source actually called it. If it's a reset, what's changing? What's kind of out and what's in now, according to these sources?
Well, the emphasis seems to be shifting.
Yeah.
Sources characterize things like climate action, still important, presumably, but not one of the top 7 listed priorities. Diversity initiatives, social justice focus, that whole sunny ways vibe from the previous government. Those are seen as less central now, maybe less idealism.
Okay, so if those are less prominent, what's taking their place? What's in?
The focus seems much more on things like finding new allies, boosting trade, embracing technocracy, relying on experts, technical fixes, also AI, big infrastructure projects, definitely productivity and defense.
So more pragmatic, maybe, geared towards those big generational challenges you mentioned.
That seems to be the framing presented in the sources, yes. A results-driven response to a tough environment.
Okay, let's dig into that mission statement then, the single mandate letter. It lays out 7 core priorities. These are the government's own stated goals. What's number 1?
Right. Priority 1 is all about key relationships, establishing a new economic and security relationship with the U.S., and also strengthening ties with other reliable trading partners and allies globally.
And I think I saw in some sources, it wasn't just about the U.S., there was talk of looking beyond North America, too.
Exactly. It's presented as both shore up that vital U.S. relationship, but also actively build bridges elsewhere. A multi-track approach, really.
Which makes sense if the world is seen as more dangerous and divided, like the sources say. Okay, priority 2.
This one's focused inward, building one Canadian economy. That means tackling barriers to trade between provinces and identifying and speeding up major nation-building projects.
That internal trade piece is interesting. One source specifically highlighted the language about aiming for not 13 economies, but one Canadian economy. You can feel the frustration there with, provincial barriers.
Yeah, it suggests a real push to make Canada's own internal market work better, likely tied to boosting that productivity number we talked about.
Okay. Priority 3 feels very immediate.
Bringing down costs for Canadians and helping them get ahead, that's pretty direct, straight from the letter, and clearly linked to those affordability pressures.
And number 4, housing affordability. That's massive. What are the specific ideas mentioned there?
The letter mentions unleashing public-private cooperation, trying to catalyze a modern housing industry, and also creating new careers in the skilled trades. So tackling supply, workforce, and partnerships.
Okay. Priority 5 takes us back to security.
Yeah, protecting Canadian sovereignty and keeping Canadians safe. This covers strengthening the military, securing borders, and reinforcing law enforcement. Pretty broad security mandate.
And number 6, that's about people, right?
Talent and immigration, attracting the best global talent tied to the economy, presumably, but also bringing overall immigration rates back to what they call sustainable levels. So a bit of a balancing act described there.
And the last one, number 7.
Spending less on government operations. The idea presented is so that Canadians, people, and businesses can invest more, ultimately aiming to build the strongest economy in the G7. Connects back to those fiscal pressures.
Right. So these 7 points, the sources are quick to remind us, these aren't out of the blue. They were campaign promises. This letter is basically saying, this is what we said we'd do, and this is our focus now.
Exactly. And it also apparently gets into how they're supposed to work.
Yeah.
Ministers need to figure out how their department fits into these 7 goals.
So not just operating in silos.
Right. Identify goals, measure success, work as a team. That's the message.
And there's a structure for that. Cabinet committees.
Yeah. Specific committees are set up to push these priorities forward and track progress. And overseeing it all is this Priorities Planning and Strategy Committee, chaired by the PM himself.
Sounds powerful.
And some of the new committee names really tell the story. Build Canada, Government Transformation and Efficiency, Secure and Sovereign Canada. Very clear focus areas.
No ambiguity there. Now, the sources also mention this whole plan was kind of finalized during a pretty low-key, almost secretive cabinet retreat at Meech Lake.
Yeah, 2-day planning forum, as one source called it. And several outlets noted the limited media access, which suggests maybe a deliberate effort to hammer out a unified message, perhaps after some recent public disagreements or mixed signals mentioned in the press.
Okay. And that new CEO corporate mission statement vibe you mentioned earlier, it fits with this push for actual deliverables that the sources talk about. Apparently, there are some immediate tasks with a really ambitious deadline. July 1st.
July 1st. Yeah, that date jumped out in the reporting. It's, what, less than 2 months away?
Yeah.
Very tight.
What are they trying to get done by then?
The things mentioned are cutting taxes, removing federal barriers to internal trade, hitting that one Canadian economy point again, and making national parks free for the summer.
Wow, that's fast, especially since Parliament hasn't even sat yet. Sources say that starts next week.
That's the timeline. They'll elect a House Speaker first, and then, pretty big deal, King Charles III is delivering the throne speech in person. So, yeah, very packed schedule right out of the gate.
Okay, so beyond the mandate letter and the immediate plans, your sources also touch on some other related political stuff happening around this.
They do. Context is important. For instance, Liberal MPs are apparently voting soon on whether to adopt powers under the Reform Act.
The Reform Act. Remind us quickly what that is.
It's that law that gives MPs in a caucus more potential power relative to the party leader. Things like triggering a leadership review vote or deciding who gets kicked out of caucus.
Right.
The sources know the Prime Minister says he's fine with the Liberals holding this vote, and they also point out that, look, all parties have to deal with the Reform Act now. These votes happen at the start of a parliament. It's part of the process, but still interesting given the current dynamics.
Got it. What else? The sources looked at trade, too, especially dealing with the U.S. Any interesting insights there?
Yeah, some trade experts quoted actually suggest time might be on Canada's side when negotiating with the Americans, maybe more so than for other countries.
Really? You often hear the opposite, that Canada needs to hurry before the U.S. focus shifts.
I know, right? But these experts point to, say, the recent UK deal with the U.S., calling it very shallow, suggesting maybe rushing isn't always best. And there was this fun detail, too. Apparently, the Canadian Embassy's location in D.C., right on Pennsylvania Avenue, is seen as a bit of an advantage for those informal but crucial conversations.
Huh. Location, location, location. Okay, shifting to defense. There was a briefing note mentioned, prepared for the previous minister. What was the big takeaway there?
The sources say Canada not hitting that 2% of GDP NATO spending target is the absolute elephant in the room.
Still, That's been talked about for years.
Exactly. And according to this note, it's a real obstacle. It hinders deeper cooperation. Specifically mentioned was Canada's ability to fully plug into things like a UKIS, that security pact with Australia, the UK, and the US.
So it's not just optics, it affects real partnerships.
That's the argument presented. The perception among allies, according to the sources citing the note, is that Canada doesn't pull its weight and maybe isn't taking defense seriously enough.
Were there other defense issues flagged in that note?
Yes. The sources mention Canada's procurement system, how we buy military gear. It's described as having long lead times, lack of agility, and often cumbersome processes. Basically, too slow and clunky.
So it's hard to get the equipment needed.
That's the issue raised. And also, some perceived misperceptions about what Canada can do, which apparently led to being excluded from some specific electronic warfare collaboration.
So the advice wasn't just spend more money, it was also fix the system and show what you can actually contribute.
Pretty much. The note apparently advised focusing on showing results like moving quickly on NORAD modernization, the North American defense system, and delivering on the Indo-Pacific strategy rather than just talking about priorities. Actions speak louder than words, essentially.
Okay, and one last piece from the sources, the conservative opposition has announced its team.
Yeah, they've named their key critics for portfolios that line up directly with these mandate letter priorities: trade, finance, housing, defense, immigration, and so on. Basically setting the stage for the debates and challenges ahead as Parliament resumes.
Right. So bringing this all together, we've looked at the generational challenge context, the new approach, the 7 priorities, the execution plans, the tight deadlines, the related political stuff like trade and defense issues from your sources. Why should you, the listener, care about all this detail?
Well, because this isn't just, political inside baseball. This deep dive shows the government's stated plan to tackle things that sources link directly to your life. We're talking about the cost of groceries, your rent or mortgage payments, maybe job opportunities in new industries or skilled trades, how safe the country feels, even how efficiently the government works when you need something from it.
This is the government laying out its blueprint, saying, here's how we see the big problems and here's our strategy.
Exactly. It's about understanding that vision, their proposed solutions, and those first concrete steps they're aiming for, like by July 1st.
And it's a vision, as the sources make clear, set against some pretty significant challenges with some really ambitious timelines attached.
Absolutely. So I guess the final thought, drawing from everything in your sources, the scale of that generational challenge, those looming deadlines, the known hurdles like defense spending perceptions or fixing procurement, what questions does this raise for you about the road ahead? How achievable are these priorities, really?
Something definitely worth thinking about as this new government really gets underway.